Alrighty, good morning, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well this morning. Been a while since we've had anybody on. Been trying to set some stuff up, and as y'all know, I'm still dealing with helping my mom out and getting her set for surgery and everything. So appreciate everybody that's been giving me well wishes and checking in on me and all of that. Couldn't ask for a better group of followers. I'm very excited about our guest today because not only do we have not only are we going to be covering his military career today, tomorrow about this time we're going to end up covering his post-military career, which will equally rival some of the excitement, and some parts I would say would probably outrival some of the excitement he's had in his military career because boy, oh boy, it's I'm not even going to ruin the surprise, but it's going to be a good show tomorrow. Um, but today we've got our guest is Mr. Tim Collier, and he was a E4 corporal when he got out of the Marines. He'll end up going through his biography, but he joined up in '87, swore in March of '87. Went to boot camp on his birthday, and ended up getting out of the military, I believe in '91. So we're going to get him to kind of give a little brief biography on himself, and then we're going to kind of jump into it and ask him some questions about his Marine Corps career. So, Mr. Tim, if you'd like to give us a little rundown, go ahead, and we'll get after it after you finish up.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Bud, for all you're doing for these Vietnam vets. That's the forgotten war, in my opinion. Those guys were heroes. Went through I didn't even go through a tenth of what they went through as a 20-year-old, But yeah.
And a big thanks to Mr. Terry for hooking us up. He's already here watching as well.
Is Terry on?
He is.
All right. Well, thank you, Terry. I appreciate you connecting us. I really appreciate you. And, that's one of the heroes right there amongst the many that Bud
absolutely
kind of memorializes, about the Vietnam War. But so I graduated high school, '85, went to college. Like most, I was lost, didn't know what to do. Kind of wanted to go on some adventures. I had a buddy of mine that I grew up with that I lost contact for about a year with. And he was a troublemaker. In fact, he got in some real bad trouble. And the judge said, you're going to do 4 years in the penitentiary or you're going to join the service. And my buddy said, okay. Well, he was kind of a smart ass to the judge and was like, you pick the service then. And of course, the judge picked the Marine Corps. And he joined the Marine Corps. He came back after boot camp, a changed guy. I couldn't believe it. I could not believe this guy, and just probably lost 80 pounds, was squared away. He told me about, Marine Corps the boot camp was going to be rough, but, he kind of did his sales pitch, and I found myself at the recruiters with him within a month. And I signed up. I think I signed up for military police or barracks duty. I think that embassy duty. And of course, I guess they were waiting on classes to start, or I was in the delayed entry program. So I signed up. I did my pledge. And then I want to say the end of March, I went to MEPS in Minneapolis. And it was basically all, the recruiters sugarcoated that, but MEPS was no joke. I was just like up 24 hours. Everybody I'm on here, I'm sure, I've been through it. And then I shipped out to MCRD. I flew from Minneapolis to MCRD on April Fools and stepped on those yellow footprints. And we met our receiving DIs and a total shock. And then I thought, naive, I thought that the receiving DIs were going to be our DIs throughout the boot camp. And, I was like, oh, this isn't too bad. They showed us, pack your clothes, and you had to put your address on the box. And then we took our box to some warehouse, get rid of civilian clothes. And then one day, I think it was my birthday, they took us to our squad bay and introduced us to our real DIs. And that's when I shit my pants, because those guys are no joke. And then, so I joined, so I finished up boot camp. It was rough, but finished up boot camp, went home for, I want to say, a week. And then I had orders for, when I went through, it was called SOI.
Mm-hmm. School living.
Yeah. And I ended up there. And, of course, they show you guard duty, and, it was all weapons and tactics. And so, yeah, that's when I tried out for, because they were called troop handlers at that time. And they were kind of cool. But we had some individuals from a recon battalion that came to recruit some of us, and I was an okay shooter, but I was a fish in the water. My back history was I lifeguarded and taught swimming for years and years and years. I grew up on a lake, so I was like a fish. So we did the ruck. I don't know how many miles. It was probably 25, 30-mile ruck, swim qual, weapons. And they said that we all passed. There was myself and 2 other Marines. And then it came down that we weren't selected. So I was kind of bummed about that. And then after graduating SOI, they sent us orders to your MOS. I was, 03. Oh, I want to back up. So when I first did my pledge and joined the Marine Corps on delayed entry, I thought I was good to go, So, of course, my buddies had a party for me, and we kind of got into some trouble. And then I ended up at the MEP station, but at the MEP station, we had to sign in again. We had to, do our vow or pledge again. And they said, hey, anybody that was in trouble during leave or before you came to MEPS, you raise your hand, because we're going to find out, So, of course, I raised my hand, and they said that they couldn't give me disciplinary action. They couldn't kick me out, but they took my MOS away.
Oh, man.
So immediately when my heart sunk, they rushed me off to a room and showed me basically a Chuck Norris or a Rambo movie. Like, oh, you can shoot M60s. You can be this guy, And I was like, oh, I was young. I was like, I want to shoot big guns. Okay, I'll do that. So then anyway, fast forward to getting to my camp. It was right off Barcelona Road. What camp? Camp Horno. I was at Camp Horno. And I think I remember telling you this, Bud. We were sitting in admin to check in, and I was going to go to India Company. And there was 4 of us sitting there on the bench, and across the hallway was another bench of guys discharging from the Marine Corps. And I could still remember today their camouflage utility uniform almost looked white. They were ready to go, just salty dudes. And the admin lieutenant comes out, and he was like, hey, it's you guys' lucky day. I need 3 quotas for admin and 1 quota for supply. And I'll let you guys think about it. And then he turned around and went back to his office. And we're like discussing it. Like, I want to be in the field. I want to be in the water. I want to do all this crazy shit. I'm not I don't want to be a paper pusher, And these guys discharging that were sitting across the hall, they were like, you guys are nuts. I'm not going to tell you the words they use. You guys are absolutely insane. You want to it's boot camp all over again every day for 4 years. Do you want that? And so I was like, I don't know. And then the lieutenant came out and he said, "You need to make a decision." And I raised my hand and said, "I'll work supply." And within 20 minutes, there was a corporal from supply, H&S company, that came down and got me. I didn't go to school. I just learned OJT. And so I was in supply.
Wow. Literally just off the fly like that. I mean, all of that's pretty wild. I mean, there you are, infantry trained. You even screened recon, and them taking away your original MOS. That's a real punch in the gut right there.
Yeah, it was a total shock, but then it was a blessing because, as most of the viewers, I'm sure even some Vietnam vets, is supply was the shit, I guess, back then. It was like if you needed something, if you had a buddy in supply, you were hooked up, know. And so I learned that as I progressed, that, hey, this is where you make deals and you make friends. And so it was like I almost turned into a pirate, hooking dudes up. And, back then there was 0 computers. So if you were assigned to 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, you came to us for supply to get all your 782 gear. And basically it was an 8x5 card, and it listed all your gear, and all the Marine had to initial it and sign it that he received it. And then I would put it alphabetically in a box, Wow.
And I mean, it's all interesting because, like you said, it's being supply, and the guys in the field and the recon guys know you better make good friends with somebody in supply to make sure you stay kitted out or can get whatever you want. You end up, funny enough, your recon test, thinking you'd probably not ever see any recon guys again. You end up making pretty good friends with some recon guys on down the line and helping them out quite a bit. So that's pretty cool as well.
And Scout Cyper, I think it was called Force Recon Direct Action Platoon is what they called them. And but that trickled, my supply and hookups even followed me on my first deployment on the USS Belleau Wood, where I mentioned the Master Chiefs. That's the recon element right there. Yeah. Most of those guys I knew really well, and their Connex box was situated right next to mine. So we would trade gear. If they needed new canteens, I'd give them new canteens. Ammo pouches, duty belts, stuff like that. And at the time they were passing out those, what was it? Was it a 1 gallon, 2 gallon collapsible canteen with a pouch? It was a bigger one. Wow. But yeah, it was a lot of fun learning supply. And my first deployment, I lucked out, like you and I talked about. I was we were getting ready to deploy, loading up all our equipment, and the S4 captain came down and with a buddy of mine that worked S4. He was admin, and because he was my buddy, he was he was trying to gather groups, volunteers to join combat cargo on ship. And combat cargo combat cargo was part of the Navy. And what we would do, you could either sign up for the flight deck or the hangar deck or the well deck. And the well deck I didn't want because that was all chaining equipment down. You're basically a grease monkey, know. And so I volunteered for the flight deck, and we were in charge of mail drops, escorting troops onto aircraft, taking Marines off the aircraft onto the flight deck and down to the berthing. So, and then of course we had to do fire watch. So that was a really good job. I like combat cargo. It was interesting. During flight ops, we would get called up there, and the flight operations, he would allow us to go out there and learn how to guide in Harriers,
Oh,
helicopters.
wow.
Yeah, so it was pretty cool, with the light sticks, guiding. So we had 2 Harriers on the Belleau Wood. We had 2, I want to say 53s, and then the rest were 46s. Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot of weight in there.
It was cool to experience that, because I had done supply for a year. I knew supply, I knew how to do the inventory, and so it was nice to be away from supply and be a part of this combat cargo. And of course, the S4 captain, when we pulled into, this was a Westpac. So we hit the Philippines, we hit Korea, we hit Thailand, we hit Australia, back to the Philippines. So where Liberty was kind of restricted for other companies, our S4 captain was just like, go have fun. If I don't hear from you, that means you're in trouble and I'll come find you. And
that's great.
I know a lot of your listeners, once, I've only heard stories at that time. So, you see, you get off and in the Philippines and you smell, you get hit by that heat, the humidity, and the smells were atrocious. But we were adventurous kids and we just wanted liberty. Went out and found the closest bar, and but yeah, that was my first deployment was pretty cool. In fact, I think we're almost to Hawaii, and my daughter was born. My older daughter Laura was born, and they announced it on the ship.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of cool because I had no clue. There was no, I think we had one sat phone, and you had to stand in line for like 6 hours to make a 15-minute phone call,
Jeez.
But yeah, that first deployment was pretty cool.
How long did that last, the cruise or the deployment?
Okay, so that was 6 months.
6 months.
6 months cruise. Yeah, we left San Diego and then returned to San Diego 6 months later. And it was like, it's a sore subject. I don't really want to get into a lot of the details, but I was working combat cargo up on the flight deck, and we were in the triage area because we got to be friends with the purple guys. And the purple guys, I think, they chained down. I think yellow was ordnance. So we got to know a lot of the Navy guys up there. And then we were up there one day, and we stacked. I was responsible, along with 5 or 10 other guys, combat cargo. We loaded up troops from the different companies to do an operation outside of Pohang in Korea. And 2 53s crashed and killed, killed Marines, burned them. And then, so they medevaced them to the Belleau Wood. So we were, instead of bringing troops off, after the operation, we were bringing stretchers off. So I helped with that. And it was rough because it was muddy and rainy. So you didn't know who was burned and who was full of mud. So yeah, that was a rough time during that deployment.
Jeez Louise. Yeah. I mean, anytime you've got aircraft going down, and like it's going to be a hellacious scene. And especially if there's any bodies to recover or what have you, that's terrible to hear. I hate to hear that.
Yep. I was a Lance Corporal for that. And then I got back after that deployment, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners can agree or went through the same thing, but we went overseas. We went through what we went through. It wasn't, we weren't at war, but you come back to garrison and you got these boot lieutenants that just graduated from OCS, wanting to be saluted and wanted all this respect. And it's like, you haven't been anywhere, if you've been somewhere and done something, then I'll respect you. That was my attitude. And I loved I loved the Mustangs. There was a few lieutenants that were once staff sergeants that I knew, and I gave them all the respect in the world, you know.
And for those that aren't familiar with a Mustang, can you tell them what a Mustang is and a Mustang officer is?
Oh, yeah. So basically, it's an enlisted individual that came up through the ranks and then decided to go to OCS. Mm-hmm. And one of my buddies said, "Hey, this is messed up. I can do way better. I know my troops. I know what they need. I know how to handle things." So they were like, "I'm going to be a lieutenant," you know? So they put in their time as enlisted and then just went back to OCS and got their lieutenant, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
and there's a lot of good Marine Mustang officers through history. A lot of good ones.
Yeah. Mad respect for those guys.
Oh yeah.
But it was difficult for me to adjust to garrison. You know, you're crossing a parade deck and you forget to salute a butter bar, and he gets in his feelings and tries to give you a 4-hour speech about how he deserves respect and all this stuff. So I got in trouble, got my Lance Corporal taken from me.
Oh gosh.
And then I went back to supply, and we did supply things, and you know, I went through a bunch of different inventories and inspections, and I was just being a young Marine, you know, hitting the off-base clubs and doing my thing. And but the second deployment was the big one for the Gulf War conflict.
Now, was it before you, excuse me, before the big deployment to the Gulf? Didn't you weren't you basically running your own warehouse for a while before the Gulf, or was that after?
No. So what happened is I was in the battalion supply with my 10, 15 guys I worked with. Lieutenant down there was super cool. I loved him. The staff sergeant loved him too. There's a few sergeants and corporals. We all got along. And the S4 captain came down right before we deployed to the Gulf. And he said, "Hey, I need a supply rep for the USS New Orleans to come with me." And I was like, I don't know, because, you know, my lieutenant and supply guys were saying, hey, they got wind that they were going to be on a brand new supply ship. So basically it was an oil tanker that they redid, refabricated, basically brand new into a battalion supply ship.
Wow.
And of course that comes with all the, you know, the new berthing, a new chow hall, new everything. And I was kind of thinking about going on the Belleau Wood the USS New Orleans to the Gulf as the supply rep. But my buddies were like, "Come on, what are you doing? That's an old ship. You know, we're going to get on a new ship and it's going to be awesome." And finally the S4 captain talked me into it. He goes, "Hey, your inventory's been solid. You're a squared away Marine, even though you got in trouble. But if you do this for me, I'll definitely promote you on this cruise." And so I left battalion supply and I joined S4. And basically he was like, "You're going to be your own boss. You're going to be the only supply rep on the New Orleans. Pack a Connex box with, I don't know, probably 25, 30 sets of 782 gear. Put whatever you want in there. And then I'll, and then I escorted my Connex box down to San Diego and loaded it on the ship." And that was insane because it was like I was attached to S4, and basically it was 2 clerks, the captain, the armorer, 2 guys in the armory and supply, and 1 in logistics. And the captain was our boss, and the captain was cool as hell. Like, he was basically like, "Hey, I don't want to see you unless I need you." You know what I mean?
Wow.
So here I am, 20 years old on ship, you know, and I was the supply guy for the whole battalion on the New Orleans. And that's when, you know, the captain's like, hey, why don't you go down to, he goes, I'm going to try to help you out. Why don't you go down to the mess hall and knock on the Master Chief's hatch to get in and go talk to some Master Chiefs. And Navy Master Chiefs were dudes that were told to avoid because they were just crotchety. They were like, no, I mean, they didn't give a shit. They were just like, you respect me or you're nothing. So I was scared. I went in there and there was probably 4 of them in there eating. And I just looked at them with deer in the headlights. They looked at me and one of them said, what do you want? And I go, oh, I'm the supply rep for the ship. And they said, oh, come on in. We're having steaks tonight.
Oh, man.
And so, you know, because I had access to brand new 782 gear, you know. So I kind of outfitted, you know, their needs. And in return, they said, we'll look out for you once a week. Look under your bunk down in your berthing. And sure enough, once a week for the whole cruise, they give me a care package of, you know, a plate basically with steak, lobster, and shrimp, and so it was pretty cool just being my own boss on that ship, going up, cleaning out my Connex box. The recon team, their Connex boxes were right next to mine, so when they were up there going through and cleaning their gear, I was up there too. And so they would like, hey man, I need a new canteen pouch, or I need some ammo pouches. Do you want this parachute bag? And the parachute bags were super cool. They were heavy duty gray bags with a zipper on it and stuff. And so we would do little trades like that.
Wow.
And that's how I got to know those guys. But it was really a neat experience being the only supply rep on that. And then I started running low on gear. So the captain said, well, go up to flight ops and see if you can get a flight over to the USS Mobile and then load up what you need and bring it back to the ship. So I went up to operations and said, hey, I need a flight to the USS Mobile to pick up supplies. And so he coordinated in, you know, the flight path or the flight schedule for me to, I think they were probably 15 or 20 miles behind us. And this is while we were en route to the Gulf of Oman, you know? And so I remember it was kind of raining and I took off. I was on a 46. We landed on the USS Mobile. And I found out I made the best the best decision of my life, because when I got on ship, my supply guys hated that ship. They hated it. It was a new Navy captain running that ship.
Oh.
And he was like, because we were technically in wartime, that anytime you were out of the berthing area, you had to have your gas mask on and all kinds of weird stuff.
Oh, man.
And so I couldn't get out of there quick enough, bud. I loaded up probably another 15, 20, 30 sets of 782 gear, said hi to my buddies, and I'm like, I got to get off this ship. This ship, I can't stand this ship. And so I couldn't get back to the New Orleans quick enough. But yeah, I cross-decked back to the New Orleans and unloaded my stuff. And yeah, it was an interesting time, definitely.
Now, isn't it here soon after around this time? Don't you end up actually making your way on land here pretty soon, seeing some pretty hairy stuff going on?
Yeah, so we entered the Gulf of Oman. We did, I want to say, 1 4-day op, battalion strength. Or no, it was regimental strength in the Gulf of Oman, neutral area, to get us adjusted to the weather, the dust, the dirt, the smoke. And so we trained and then boarded the ship. And then we ended up off the coast of Kuwait. And that's when I said that they inserted us with U-boats, unloading all our gear and everything, because the New Orleans, the well deck dropped down in the back. And I think there was 2 boats that we loaded up on with all our gear. And then, but before, I think I told you this a couple weeks ago. So before we deployed into Kuwait, the chaplain came down and to our berthing and was like, "Hey, you know, Saddam is, you know, there's strong indication that he's already deployed gas, and so you guys have to disembark with full mop gear on."
God.
And I remember we were in full mop gear and we are freaking out. I must have smoked 2 packs of cigarettes that day in the berthing, you know, because it was basically like if you got any of that in your system, you were dead.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And just like in any service, you know, logistics and intel can be bad. So it was kind of like early in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5. And I remember hitting a pier as we docked. And I remember these dudes laughing at us. And I look up on the dock and there was a bunch of guys tying our boat off that had PT gear on. And they were like, what are you assholes doing in mop gear? So it was bad intel, you know?
Oh, man.
So, yeah, we set up our camp. We set up a little tent city. I want to say Ras El Gar. Yeah, Ras El Gar outside. Yeah, it was outside. We're a ways from Kuwait. But yeah, we set up our tent city, and then once the battalion was deployed, our mission, we had I think we had Lieutenant Strickland, and we had myself and 2 others in a Humvee packed full of ammo, food, extra equipment I brought along, and we would go and we would get coordinates of the different units in different locations, and then we resupply them.
Dang, that's heavy duty stuff right there.
Yeah, we'd resupply them, and of course, you know, as we traveled to Kuwait, it was like, you know, because you think of like it's a third world country. We're passing, you know, these sod huts and these mud huts and, you know, kind of tiny cities made out of dirt. But the highway, it was a dual highway, kind of like the I-5 in California. You know, it was a dual highway, but it took us forever because we were dodging all the potholes or the bomb craters because we carpet bombed the shit out of that place. And we're trying to disrupt their routes. So I just remember just, you know, doing 20 miles an hour going back and forth between these bomb craters where we bombed the highway. And then I remember one day we right before we got to Kuwait, it was about 11 a.m. and the whole sky was black. It was black all the way down to the horizon. And that was the oil fires.
Oh yes, I've got a photo of that.
So we hit that smoke. It was a wall of smoke, and it instantly turned black. You know, it was almost night, and you know, we didn't have gear. You know, we just like wrapped whatever we could around our faces so we wouldn't breathe it in. You know.
So basically what you're saying, for those of the people that have seen it, and I think I asked you about it as well, but basically it's that scene in Jarhead where the desert goes up at night and they're literally covered in it. One dude gets it in his eyes and starts freaking out. I mean, it's literally the sky is blackened and it's raining oil. Yeah.
And you couldn't help but breathe it in and cough. In fact, you know, fast forward to when I joined the prison system after the Marine Corps, I had to go through a medical evaluation and x-rays, and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with my chest x-ray until I was diagnosed with, I had oil particles in my lungs.
Jeez.
But yeah, that was, from then on, it was pretty much hell. You know, we carpet bombed that place so heavily that we just kind of saw the aftermath of, you know, the Iraqi BMPs flipped over on every side of the road and blown up. And
I mean, one thing I would really love for you to talk about. I mean, I can only imagine you. You know, it's bad. It's crazy enough. You know, you scooter Putin and getting to each place without being shot at, abducted, killed, what have you. Um, and then you're talking about some interesting things, and we just showed that photo, and there were just hundreds of these oil derricks going up. But did you not? Don't I remember you telling me you literally saw a regiment or a battalion mass surrender of officers, their NCOs and the like?
Oh no, well, what happened is, obviously that was a 45-day war.
Mm,
So once we go through all that and we get the ceasefire, they sent us to the outskirts of Kuwait to trying to think here, outskirts of Kuwait, to basically patrol the beach property. So the outskirts of Kuwait looked like any high-end beach community. Laguna Beach and Huntington Beach, all the homes were huge. They had,
wow.
watercraft out. Of course, it was all destroyed.
Oh yeah,
but a lot of money there. So we went through and we were looking for unexploded ammo, and we wanted to mark it for engineers because the Kuwaitis were slowly filtering back to reclaim their property. And we were finding these Iraqis in trenches. And as soon as they heard us, they'd come out with white flags. They were starving. They were thirsty. God. Saddam assumed that we were going to do some huge beach assault in Kuwait. And so he fortified the beaches, but he implanted, his troops too early. They were he put them in these trenches probably 7 months before we even got there.
God.
So these dudes were skinny, and I remember every single Iraqi that we took prisoner was willing. There was no firefights. They had a white flag. Get me out of here, because they knew we'd take them to a POW camp where they could eat MREs,
get food and cigarettes immediately.
Yeah, and to them, an MRE was like a steakhouse.
Oh yeah. That's after 7 months in a foxhole on the beach. I mean, heck, they would have taken anything at that point.
Yeah, so we took a group to the closest POW camp of ours, and of course, once we rolled this group in and put them in these, they were like these razor wire pens. They set up concertina wire,
Mm-hmm.
and we put them in these pens, and there was a line of Iraqis, I guess, to be either processed or for food, but they were in line. So we were going up and down the line, me and my buddies, and looking at these officers and kind of trading, hey, I'll give you this if you give me your beret.
Yeah.
So out in the garage, I still have a couple berets. I have some Iraqi cigarettes. I have some rank. But interesting about that is, we were going up and down that line, and I overheard my buddy talking to an Iraqi officer, and the Iraqi officer's was like, get me out of here. I don't belong here. And we were like, wait, what'd you just say? He goes, I don't belong here. And so we were like, well, I don't like being here either, pal. But speaking fluent English. And he's like, look, I was born and I grew up in San Diego, and I went to college in San Diego. And when my grandfather became ill, we came over here to basically say their piece before their grandfather passed away. And he was scooped up to join, hey, you're forced.
Holy hell, man.
So we took the poor kid to the intel tent, and I don't know what happened after that.
I imagine they, considering he spoke English, and was he an officer, you said, at that time? Or
he was a junior officer, yeah.
I imagine if he was that smart and they snatched him up and made him an officer or like that, I imagine he had some info to give. I imagine he
had a
did
ton.
better than the others. I imagine he was good to go after that.
Here's intel out of him, yeah. Yep.
I mean,
So
imagine that being born and raised in San Diego and you go to visit and you're snatched up and thrown in Saddam's army to go against your homeland's army. I mean, woof.
yeah, it was crazy. And like I said, we just so then they sent us to the outskirts of Kuwait to check on unexploded ammunition. There were Kuwaiti civilians obviously coming to retake their property slowly, so they would periodically show up and get out of their vehicles, and then we had to point out, don't go over there. We got engineers coming to check this out. But what was interesting is that Saddam um, made the beaches look so fortified, like if you for aerial photos. So area intel, aerial recon, it looked like there were,
Bunkers and pillboxes and
heavy guns, bunkers, tanks. And once we got down there, we found that it wasn't. The guns were actually big, huge metal pipes stuck in tires that were up like this. The tanks had no engines in them, no ammo.
What a snaky SOB.
Yeah, so we went through there, and I remember this one guy came in, drove up this driveway, and we pulled him over. He said this was his house. So we kind of showed him around his house, what stuff not to take. And of course, he was hysterical because the Iraqis trashed the house, trashed everything. And actually, I think he had a cousin that was executed by Iraqis. But he invited us inside and gave us tea. And he had those old school, huge portable cell phones. And he let my team call home from his cell phone. So that was kind of cool. And then if you could bring up the picture, that's when I stumbled onto those weapons.
Yes, that's a great story. Jeez Louise, that is unbelievable happenstance.
That was right on the beach in Kuwait, or near the beach outside of Kuwait. And it was basically, it looked like a huge anthill about 5 feet tall with a pallet up against it. And I pulled the pallet away and kind of took the butt of my rifle and moved some dirt. And it was like a door. So we opened the door, and it was a metal rebar stair or ladder that went about 25 feet down.
God.
And so we called the engineers, we checked for booby traps, and there was no light. So we had our flashlights, and we went down into this dusty room that opened up into a size of somebody's, I don't know, living room, about that size. And it was nothing but brand new Foot Lockers, like stacked, like 25 stack high, and we were like, oh, what's in these things? So we started pulling them down, and they were all new AK-47s in plastic in these Foot Lockers.
Oh.
And then they had mortars, they had the shoulder firing rockets, they had ammo. And yeah, if you could show that picture, that's me standing outside of all the weapons. Yeah, that's it. That's all the weapons we pulled out. And if you move the cursor over to the right of me, about right there where your cursor is where the hole was.
I mean, so there was a little bit of, shall we say, camo over it, and then you kind of knocked a pallet topping off, and then that revealed the tunnel entrance. Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah. So if you go over just to the right of me, standing right there, that was an anthill. That was a huge mound of dirt. And there was a pallet leaning up against the dirt, and I moved the pallet and scraped away the dirt, and it was like a little hatch, and we pulled the hatch off, and it was a rebar ladder that went down about 20-25 feet.
Holy crap.
And it was all brand new. I would probably say 200 to 300 brand new AK-47s, and they had the matching. They were like the Kalashnikov, the wooden stock and the wooden grips, and they had bayonets to match them.
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
And so being a scavenger, me and my buddies, we were like, hey, let's talk to the lieutenant, let's grab some sea bags and grab some of these weapons.
Absolutely.
So we ended up loading about 8 sea bags full of AK-47s out of this stuff and putting them in our Humvee. And I remember stopping, I think you and I discussed this. I remember stopping on our way back to our camp to unload them. And we were stopping at these little, it would be like equivalent to a 7-Eleven,
Mm-hmm.
And we'd pull in and there was Kuwaitis that were filtering back in and they were getting gas and saw what we had, saw some weapons in the back, and they wanted trophies. They wanted to buy these from us. But we were like, I can't, there's no way we can convert dinar to US money,
No. And
So,
you just don't want Kuwaitis right now. If they could have been, spies or what have you, Iraqi cells, it probably would have been sketchy trying to sell them guns right there on the street.
yeah. But, so go back a little bit before all this happened. Before we left the ship, they flew on these Kuwaiti resistors.
Oh, wow.
And they put a Kuwaiti resistor, like their revolution, they were the underground fighters,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they put one with each team. And I think the recon, the RT element, they had 1 or 2 of them too.
Wow.
Basically, they were the guys for us to get through the outskirts of Kuwait, the airport by Kuwait, and in Kuwait itself. And
that's very cool.
These guys were little maniacs. I remember we were flying somewhere, and we had one of them it was a Huey we were in, and we had one of the little resistors, and he had an old AK-47 with some water and about, God, that kid must have been carrying 400 rounds, 500 rounds. And he was all, of course, his poor family was all murdered, And so he was taking shots out of the Huey. And the pilot's like, hey, grab that gun from him. What's he doing? And he said that he thought he saw some Iraqis. And so anyway, he would lead us to our elements, like the safest route. Like, hey, we had to resupply this element. Then he would take us on a safer route to get supplies to our counterparts. So, but yeah, so we ended up back at camp with all those AK-47s, and then I told you about trying to convince my S4 captain, hey, let me take these home in my Connex box.
Yeah, that's a good story. Would you mind sharing that? Because that's a crazy one, to be honest.
Yeah. So I asked the captain, hey, I got 5 brand new AK-47s. That was part of my stash, or 6. You could only take so much. And I said, if I can, and he said, absolutely not, because people were getting court-martialed for bringing stuff out of the Middle East back into the U.S., as far as weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And so he goes, absolutely not. And I said, hey, if I can hide these in my Connex box, and if you can't find them, can I take them back? And he said, okay, deal. So I worked like a slave for probably 2 nights. And I would take the lid off some Foot Lockers, and I'd shave the lid and make false bottoms, and I hid them all. And he went in there and he couldn't find them. And I said, am I good? And he said, yeah, you're good. I can't, because he was worried about customs in Hawaii,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And so I was like ecstatic. I was like, cool, I got 4 or 5. I can give one to my buddy, one to another buddy. And I think I was going to give the RT element one kind of as a souvenir.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were this is fast forward, like on our way home, fast forward. So we're a day away from Hawaii for customs, and my captain came down to the berthing at like 2 a.m. and was just like, get them out of there. I'm having bad vibes. if you get pinched, we're done. And I said, come on, there's no way they're going to find him. I said, you couldn't even find him. And he's like, no, my conscience got the better of me. I gotta get rid of him. So here I am, me and my buddy at 2 a.m. taking AK-47s with the clips and the bandoliers and the bayonets, and we're pitching them off during trash call.
Oh, God.
Back of the ship. And I was so pissed, dude. But what's nice though is that if you were an officer, you could take a weapon and put a red tag and you bring it in, call it a battalion training aid. And so my S4 captain grabbed 2 or 3 of them, and he ended up giving me one when we were back in garrison. So
that makes up for it a little bit, at least.
It makes up for it. But here, I couldn't believe me and my buddy were on the back of the ship during trash call, pitching brand new AK-47s into the ocean.
And another funny part, they did come on board, but they didn't even end up looking at your gear.
Okay, so there was probably 30 or 40 Connex boxes on the hangar deck. And when U.S. Customs boarded, they looked at the first 2. And I was just shaking my head. And, of course, the captain, he was a little embarrassed, but bless his heart, he was a great captain. But he was just like, kind of like this. He's like, I didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know.
He wasn't wanting to take a chance and either you get in trouble, him get in trouble. I can see where he was coming from, but you kind of had to know a little bit if he's already a captain, how many times he had done this, and no, they're not going to go through all of y'all's stuff. They'd be there, forever. They'd have to have more than 2 guys on the job going through all that.
And a side note to that, it was even more bizarre because my wife at the time would not allow me with the 2 kids to bring in an AK-47 into our apartment. So I think I told you this. My buddy, who was S4, he was kind of a buddy. He was just kind of a jerk. Nobody really liked him, but he was like, hey, give it to me. I'll keep it at my house. And I said, okay. He lived in Escondido. And so a couple months later, we were moving or something, and I told him, I tried to get a hold of him, and I couldn't get a hold of him. So I went to his house, and there was yellow crime tape around his whole house and driveway. And I was like, I freaked out because I'm thinking like ATF, I'm like, I bailed out of there, and I was in panic mode. I didn't want anything to do with him again. So fast forward after I joined the Bureau, I'm sure a lot of listeners on here will remember the show Current Affair. It was like a gossip, news outlet. I'm like a month into my job, and I'm getting my uniform on watching Current Affair. And my buddy of mine that had my AK was on Current Affair. And it turned out that he was implicated in a murder for hire in San Diego.
Oh, my God.
And he ended up doing 25 years at San Quentin.
Good Lord.
Yeah, and anybody can look it up. His name is Ron Self, S-E-L-F. And he started like a veterans program at San Quentin and something for PTSD and yoga or whatever. But anyway, he's out now. But I freaked out. I didn't want any. I don't even know what happened to my rifle.
That would have been the least worry on my mind. Like you said, get as far away from that house and away from him as possible, and stay away.
Yeah.
Jeez. So when you get back stateside and everything, what's kind of going on? Are you about to end up getting out of the military at that point in time, or what's going on?
So I loved it. And I got a reenlistment code of no, you're not going to reenlist. You can't. You got in too much trouble.
Wow.
And so during the Gulf War, my S4 captain promoted me to E4 meritoriously, right? And I got some awards, but when I got back, and tried to re-enlist, everybody went to bat for me. Even the lieutenant colonel, the commander of 3-1,
Wow.
and even the gunnery sergeant, and of course my lieutenant, and then my captain, all put in good words. But the powers that be said, this guy had a disciplinary past, and that's not conducive to way I want my Marines to be, and so we're going to give him a re-enlistment code of nope, he can't. So I panicked. I was like, what am I going to do? This is all I know. Go back to school. And then I went to a job fair, and I ended up joining the Bureau in 91. Got back at the end of 91. So October of 91 is when I joined and started my career in law enforcement.
Wow. And there you thought things were going to kind of calm down, and then you're entered that's when we start that tomorrow. That is going to be a absolutely amazing history share, and hearing about you working with the DOJ. I mean, that is I'm very excited to hear about that. It kind of comes up all around, and I can imagine just helping out the guys is one part of it, but I mean, what were you most proud of in your Marine Corps career?
That I made it through boot camp. Because back then, I'm sure there's viewers that experienced it. It wasn't like, I guess there was later on in boot camp, there was stress chits or, stress cards that a boot could, a recruit could hand a DI or something. And I remember going to whiskey lockers with my DIs and getting beat for sassing them, So one of the biggest obstacles of my life was Marine Corps boot camp, and I made it out, and I was proud. I made it through Marine Corps boot camp, and I made it through my tour, and I have no regrets. In fact, I push people, it's like, hey, when I was going to join the service, my dad was Coast Guard. But when I wanted to join the toughest, I basically said, I want the toughest boot camp. And, and so that I was proud to make it through boot camp, and I was proud to serve. Yeah, really proud. And made it out with the honorable, because I got in trouble.
I think a very interesting part that you should be proud of as well is there you are depriving the enemy and maybe some future conflicts by stumbling across and finding that arms cache that you found. I mean, it ain't every day supply guys coming in getting ammo to battalions and platoons and such as that, and comes across an arms cache like that. I mean, that's almost movie type stuff, Yeah.
It was me and my buddy. And then of course once we located it, we called in the lieutenant and the rest of our crew, and we started going through it. But yeah, that was just, and to add to that, there were the pineapple, what did they call them? The pineapple grenades.
Oh yes. Yeah.
And what's the long ones? The stick?
Like the Germans used?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I forgot the name of them. Somebody on here will put it, but yeah, those old stick grenades, those were gnarly. Oof.
Yeah. Hey, how's Mr. Terry doing? Is there any questions or anybody on here?
I believe everybody's been glued in so far. Guys, if y'all have got any questions, go ahead and start getting them in, because we're here at the end, because tomorrow will be part 2 on his epic DOJ career, which is going to be outstanding. I had one question. Did you you went to boot at Pendleton, or didn't you, or did you go to Parris Island?
No, Camp Pendleton. I was a Hollywood Marine. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought I remember you and Dad both being Hollywood. Okay.
And then I guess they changed, because I read things online, and of course I'm a member of a few different boot camp pages on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
and I forget what they called it, but we didn't have to go through the crucible, they call it now. And then, excuse my language, but our in test in third phase was climbing Mount Motherfucker, they called it.
Oh yeah.
And it's the Widowmaker now, I think. They changed the name.
Yep, they did. It's gnarly. I've got some pictures of some GWAT MARSOC guys who took a picture of it, and they still call it that. But I don't see how guys made it up and down that in full battle rattle. I mean, God Almighty!
And you can go back to Pendleton today. All those fire breaks up on those mountains, we climbed all those. Yep. And that was part of the company. That's after I was picked up at Camp Horno. We did that with the battalion.
Jeez. I've got some of Dad's graduation photos and other photos and some of the runs and such around Pendleton and the firing ranges. I mean, y'all are up there, and well, at that time I think they were actually running it sometimes in their Converses when not in full battle rattle, and still, even in shorts and all that, that is just a ridiculous run up those hills at Pendleton.
Well, I think that we had it rough because we had probably 50-pound packs. We had we had all our gear.
Jesus Christ. That is that's people always ask, and I mean, basic training with the Army and then AIT and all that's tough, but I still agree with you and my dad and pretty much everybody else that there's nothing like and of course I'm not a veteran and I've not been through it, but I've spoken to a lot of Marines throughout the years, and it by far is a life-changing event to become a Marine and make it through boot camp. I mean, it literally is, you're coming through a new man.
It is. And I think the best part of boot camp was our trip to was the rifle range.
Oh yeah. To qualify or just shooting?
Well, no, we went out there. We went to, I forget what it's called. It's part of boot camp. We went out there. We were out there for a week. And in between, that's where I did my mess and maintenance. So in Marine Corps, at boot camp, you had to do mess or maintenance.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I went out there and we were doing mess and maintenance during a qualification week. Maybe it was 2 weeks we were out there. Wow. Edson Range. That's it. Edson Range.
What were y'all qualifying? What were y'all qualifying with? Still the 14, or were y'all using 16 at that time? Okay.
16A1, and just like everybody, all your listeners, I think I told you about this story where, the butts, they call it, are these huge targets on these racks, metal racks, and you use chains and you pull up and down, the carriage that has the target in it. So when somebody shoots, you see it, you're working underneath down there. You pull the target down, find the powder burn, and then wherever it is, you punch in a cylinder target and run it up so you could show them where the hit was, Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget this. I think I was back from the first deployment, and the battalion was looking for volunteers to pull targets for another battalion. And so I think I told you this, my buddy and we volunteered, and I think it was 1-9 we were pulling targets for, but we had a kid that wasn't hitting the target. And we were just like, and in our battalion, nobody goes unk, right? Oh. And so we were like, hey, this last shot to qualify, he's got to hit the target. And so we're waiting, and we hear the crack, and it hit the dirt in between the two targets. Mm. So I was like, come, we can't screw this kid. So I said, run the carriage down and just punch a circle in like the 3. And so we put a circle in the 3 and ran it up. And within 15 or 20 minutes, we had his squad leader, platoon leader, and his lieutenant and gunnery sergeant down there saying this guy never qualifies. They cheated. I want this target pulled off this rack. And we're all, my buddy and I are looking at each other going, oh, geez, what'd we do? Because we never let a Marine not qualify.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And they counted powder burns, and they found it. And of course, that was one of my first troubles I got into.
Oh yeah, I learned quickly growing up that you can think you're good at lying, you can think you're good at sneaking, but trying to lie to a Marine or steal or what have you, they know instantly when something's out of place.
But I think that they had it out for this kid. They were like,
oh, it sounds like it. If all of those men came to y'all and were like, whoa,
yeah,
whoa, whoa, whoa.
Like, we got chosen for the dipshit that couldn't fire.
Yeah, yeah. Jeez Louise.
So yeah, I got office hours for that.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Thank God it was just office hours, because that's probably something they probably could have hung you from the flagpole, so to speak, with that.
Oh yeah, I think I got 7 days restriction to the barracks and extra duty something.
Man, oh man. Thank God you that didn't end your career. That's some tough stuff right there. I don't think we've got any questions. I think everybody's been listening, and I know tomorrow there'll be just a string of questions because I've been sharing some information, getting ready for tomorrow. But
yeah, our video tomorrow is really nothing to do with what you do.
No, it's going to be, as a matter of fact, it'll be one of our first, probably our first non-military. Here is one question. Did they end up getting rid of that boy that was qualifying, or did he make
so I never met the kid, never saw him. He was back there at the 500, and we didn't interact at all. I'm sure I don't know if they let him qualify again. I don't know. All I know is I got in trouble for hooking the kid up.
It sounds like if he was having that much trouble, if they put him through it again, he wasn't gonna cut the mustard.
It almost sounded like they were rooting for him to go unk. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, as we were saying, tomorrow, as far as I know, I think that's going to be our first non-military related show in any shape or form. It's going to be dealing with really prison and some, if any of y'all, I happen to be a huge history buff of all sorts, mostly military, but right up there with the military. I'm an organized crime guy, mob guy, but unfortunately, those that know me, my father actually did a little time in federal prison, so I did a lot of research on stuff back in the day, and we're going to be getting some stories tomorrow about some of the biggest names in the federal prison system ever. Quite frankly, ever.
A pre-show thing. I did almost 29 years with the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I interacted with the mobsters in the 90s. Every security threat group you can think of: Aryan Brotherhood, Mexican Mafia, Noresta Familia, anybody you can think of, I dealt with.
I'm very excited to hear about the Mexican Mafia and the Aryan Brotherhood getting to meet up while you're having to fix up their area to make sure it's unbreakoutable.
It was interesting in my career. It was in my 29 years. It was the only time that they moved the Aryan Brotherhood from the ADX in Florence, Colorado, to my institution to go to court for the death penalty in LA. And that was the only time they were moved for a prolonged period of time to another institution in my career.
I believe since then, I don't believe they've been moved around or anything of the sort has happened again. I don't see it ever happening again like that, at least. I believe we'll be ready. We're going to be ready for tomorrow around 10:30 or so Central Standard. Do you have anything you'd like to say before we close out today?
I want to thank you. I want to thank all the Vietnam veterans. Those are the true heroes. They went through things that I couldn't even imagine going through as a Marine. My hat goes off to them. Welcome home, everybody. Thank you to Terry for hooking me up with you, bud.
Absolutely.
I want to give a shout out to my girlfriend's dad, Luck.
We'll be getting with Luck Friday, hopefully to have him on here soon.
I really, really appreciate you looking out for him to try to find his brother that was shot down and is missing in action, technically.
Yeah, that's going to be a real heartbreaker of a show, but very informative and a subject that all of these fans, that if they're not into looking at our missing in action and POWs, that they need to, and they're going to get a firsthand experience and hearing it straight from the proverbial horse's mouth about what was going on and is going on with our missing in action. So I'm very much looking forward to that.
It hits home, and I want to thank you so much for looking into Luck Patterson's situation, because he has dedicated his life.
Oh, geez, yes.
In trying to find information about his brother Kelly.
It's gonna be one of our more moving interviews, quite frankly. It's a bit of a tearjerker, to be honest with you, but it's a story I really, when you told me about it, Brandon, who's going to be helping me out, he knew all about it, and just hearing Mr. Luck and everything he's gone through is, heartbreaking, but yet showing the utter love and drive that a brother has to find out what happened to his other brother. It's just,
and that's why you're such a godsend, because Luck isn't tech savvy, and this is just another forum mm-hmm. to get his story out, because who knows, Kelly could have supported RT teams in Laos and North Vietnam. And, because he flew, I think Luck said 80 some missions.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
I think it was 86 or so. That was his 86 that he went missing on.
There might be some RT vets on here that that recall either his code name or his call sign or something, and he helped out an RT team,
Oh, yeah. We're going to beat the bush, and that's why when we hook up Friday, we might actually end up going live right off the bat Friday evening around 5:00 Central Standard. So I'll keep y'all updated on that. But it's going to be a really good interview, and I thank you for hooking me up with him to be able to speak with him, to get him on to help share his story. So yeah. I'm very excited for that, and I'm very excited for tomorrow, to where we can hear about what you did with the rest of your career, because I think it's going to be awesome for people to hear what you went right into after the Marine Corps. So
yeah, and like my girl Lindsay, that's her dad, Luck Patterson. It's going to give her some relief, because she lives with his struggle.
I can only imagine with a brother and a family member missing. So as long as he's been missing, and then the stories and that we'll end up hearing, it takes a strong person to keep going and just not give up faith. And he's a strong man, to say the least.
Yep.
So
that's it. All I got, bud. Thank you. I appreciate you again. Thanks to Terry for hooking you and I up together.
Absolutely.
Thank you for what you're doing to these heroes, to these Vietnam vets, and getting their stories out. And yep, you're a blessing, bud.
I appreciate it. And I appreciate all you've done to help me, sharing your story, and tomorrow, the rest of your story. So we'll link up what we did today, and I think we'll have a good show tomorrow as well.
Yeah, we'll talk prison, and we'll talk inmates tomorrow.
Absolutely. All right, guys, we're going to close it down. I hope everyone has a good day, and we will see y'all tomorrow.